Shanti Balaraman is the co-founder and CEO of the Children's Innovation Center, which is committed to empowering young minds to think creatively and make new discoveries through innovative, sustainable solutions. She's a leading researcher, innovator, and thought leader in the field of transformative education and disruptive thinking. She's president of Stanford University's chapter of Sigma Chi, the Scientific Research Honor Society, and is very much, has a very strong portfolio across many issues, and she'll be talking about food sustainability today. So I'll stop my share and let you, I'll hide and I present to you Shanti Balaraman.
Thanks, Dennis, for the wonderful introduction. It's my pleasure to be here today and speak about food sustainability. So just give me a minute, I'll get the slide started. Okay. Okay. So food sustainability, when we talk about food sustainability, it's not just meeting the demand of the community's food needs. So there are so many other elements, as you can see in this diagram on the right. There's so many other areas that must be considered. If we are going to meet the food demands of the community, if we lose focus of the other areas, then it will cause imbalance in this entire system. So, we need to consider, keep a focus and remember that there's this full system that must be considered when we want to achieve real food sustainability. So let's see how ready we are for this challenge. World population, as you know, is constantly rising. We are soon going to rise up, add another 2.5 billion more people. So that means we need more food, and the food demand is going to increase by 60%. When we have to increase the food production and meet this food demand, we are facing other issues like 40%, we are going to have less water. And the climate crisis is another huge hurdle. So, food systems, the entire system, accounts for over 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So while we need to increase food production to keep everybody fed throughout the world, so we need to make sure that we are not causing further problems with the climate change and with the limited resource. So I can see this is a huge challenge and we need to address this. So if we look into the system, the components from the farm to the consumer cycle, okay, this is a much simplified version of that large system which I showed you earlier. So we can see all of these elements, components, must be taken into consideration, and there are so many different problems in each of these entities as well. So how do we reduce this cycle? Is we have this initiative, buy fresh, buy local, and this is where we go to the farmers market and buy produce. But then what is local? Let's define local. When people were asked, can you define what is local? Is it 10-mile radius, 50-mile radius, or 500-mile radius? What is local? Is it within the state or within the country? So you see, this is a huge problem. We don't know what is local, and so it's very hard when you go to the farmers market and you're looking for things. Are they really from within this certain radius? So we need to redefine what is local and make sure that we have all the things that is needed to meet the community's demands in that local area. So if we look into farmers market and this initiative has been there for a while, how many people, households are actually using it? And if we look at this data here, high income people only 25 or 24.9%, and the medium income people 27.6%, and low income people 22%. So average, only we are only 25% of the people are shopping at the farmers market. So what could be the hurdle here? Why we haven't reached large numbers and larger participation here? So we need to understand that if we need to increase the buy local, buy fresh, buy local, initiative. So out of these people who are shopping, the data shows that 33.3%, one third of the population are youngsters, 18 to 29 years. So that is quite promising, to know that at least the next generation is more, socially responsible here. But then we have to see what is preventing the rest of us from participating in this buy fresh, buy local, and why is this participation so low, only average 25%? So for that, we need to see, if we go to the farmers market, are we able to buy everything we need? We still end up going to the grocery store afterwards because we can't find everything we need, isn't it? That's because we need varieties in our food. So we end up shipping from all across the world. So unless we are able to have all the varieties within this local area, this shipping, export and import across, globally, across all countries, is still going to happen. So we need to look into how can we increase varieties in the local area. And what is local? Is it the state? We need to define that as well. So when we are choosing our food, we need to understand the carbon footprint, and it's always best to choose from the lowest, carbon footprint food items. So here's a graph that, shows the greenhouse gas emissions for the various food items here. And you can see, these colors, in each of these denotes from the land use to the farm, all the way to the process that is involved in this entire food system. So it's important to know that, that we pick items, we change our food habits to be in the lower end of the carbon footprint items. So when we think of transformative and sustainable changes, we need to think about the entire system from the production to consumption. We cannot take our focus off any of the other entities within this entire system. So, and we need to be really thinking about solution that will really transform those areas, and not just slight band-aid, solutions. So some bold, disruptive, solutions are needed here. So let's look into each of these areas. What is the current situation, and what can be done here. So in the land use, how are we using our land? So most of our farming now, we can see we are doing monoculture farming. And what that means is we have one crop for a large area of land, acres and acres, of land. We just grow only single crop. So with that habit of, monoculture farming, what is happening is we are missing the diversity, that will help the soil be naturally rich and healthy. So the soil degrades. When the soil degrades, we are adding synthetic materials, and these synthetic materials are coming from fossil fuels. So these, also, as the soil gets weaker, the plant that grows on it is not as healthy, and so we are, adding more and more fertilizers, more strong fertilizers also. And then the diseases are increasing, plant and pest diseases are increasing. So then we are adding more stronger pesticides. So there is this organism resistance, weed killers and pesticides are getting more stronger, chemically, and we are adding more synthetic materials. The more we add, the more problem we are creating for the soil. It's degrading further. So this is a really big problem with the monoculture farming. And the other problem is when rain comes, or we are having floods, quite often flash floods nowadays. So all these chemicals run off from these lands into the water streams. So if we look into like Midwest, most of the farms, they're monoculture farms, the runoffs go into the Mississippi River, and it ends in the Gulf of Mexico. So we can see here, the dead zones. Dead zone means there's absolutely no marine life there. So you can see, the runoffs from these farms carried down to the Gulf of Mexico. And so these are areas across the world, it's completely, there is no marine life because of the runoffs from the monoculture farms. There are other areas that are low oxygen areas, because these nutrients, the fertilizers that run off from these land, also help the algae, the algal blooms, are increasing. They grow a lot because they're getting additional nutrients from these lands as well. And with the warmer temperature, they grow really fast. And all these chemicals make them toxic as well. They absorb all these chemicals, and these algal blooms are becoming toxic. And when aquatic life is impacted, they eat those algae, and so it continues into the food cycle. So this is a huge problem. So anything underneath these algal blooms, there is low oxygen, depletion of oxygen as well. So this graph just shows the area for complete lack of life. Okay, we killed everything in that area, and there are many more low oxygen areas as well. So this is all problems stemming from monoculture farming. There's another huge problem is colony collapse disorder. So what this means is the honeybees colony, that are in these regions, when they go and forage from the flowers from these farms, they bring the pesticides and chemicals stick to their body, and they bring it to their colony. And within 2 to 4 weeks, their colony is now infested with all these chemicals. Along with that, they also carry the pathogens, the diseases from the plant diseases into their colonies. And another big problem is because there's only for acres, just one variety of flower there, so the nutritional value also, they are not, they're losing the nutritional value, strength. So all of these are causing the entire colonies to collapse. This is another huge problem. So in US, as of January 22, honey cannot be called certified organic, in US. So because of all these pesticides, we cannot limit the honeybees, saying that don't go and forage from this farm, so that we cannot limit. Though some organic, in a bottle, they say that, who say that it's certified organic, they are usually certified from another country, and so it is not certified organic from US. So what they say is, oh, within 5 mile or 5 kilometer radius, if there are organic, plants around, then we can classify that honey as organic, but the data doesn't show that way. So 198 samples across the world, when honey was tested, you can see the amount of pesticides and the types of pesticides found in every sample. So there is pesticide in the honey, but you can see that the concentration of the pesticide in that sample, okay, this is the concentration found in those samples. So the research shows that pesticides are found in honey around the world. It harms the honeybees, but not people. Okay, so this is something that we need to understand, that within our body, if our body is not flushing out these chemicals, then these chemicals bioaccumulate inside our body, and soon this percentage of chemical would accumulate and increase within our body. So there is no research done when bioaccumulation after a few years, what is the harm that it does to people. So keep that in mind, when you're shopping for honey nowadays. So this is something to be thoughtful about. So let's look into the land, right? So current monoculture land, if we can look into, the land where we do a lot, if we till the land, for every year for planting, the land emits carbon dioxide, and it also emits water vapor. So the land becomes more dry, and it consumes more water resources as well. Remember, we are going to have less water, so we are losing water in this type of farming. Whereas if we move to regenerative farming, then the land sequesters carbon, it stores carbon dioxide in the land, and it keeps the water in the land. So it keeps the water, we need less water in this regenerative farming. So there are 6 core principles in regenerative farming. First, we need to help the farmers, what are they doing, what is their operation, and we need to understand their current operational needs, and then we need to act on proposed solutions. We need to minimize tilling, the disturbance in the soil. And we need to maximize crop diversity. We can't have just one crop for the entire farmland, and then after that is harvested, the land is just dry for the rest of the year. We need to keep the soil covered, and we need to ensure there's living roots in the soil all the time, and integrate livestock as well. So there's a crop rotation can be adopted, where we are growing different types of crops throughout the year. But a much better solution is permaculture. So, permaculture is mimicking a real ecosystem where we mix various types of crops and trees, and even the microbial small creatures, to bees, to even large animals. This is a plan here, the permaculture design, where we can incorporate and make sure there is true diversity here. I want to point out the difference between polyculture and permaculture. Polyculture means growing 2 or more plants at the same time, usually on the same piece of land. Permaculture has a larger focus, where it takes into consideration everything on that land, from buildings to everything. So we are having this whole system view when designing a permaculture, and you can see that the land automatically will start regenerating and becoming healthy once we do permaculture. But then we need to also understand that permaculture, though the land recovers, this land is susceptible to climate change, the changing seasons and or natural disasters. So those things are still it is susceptible to. Um, but other than that, recovering the land, permaculture design is a very good solution. So the bigger problem, with this monoculture farm also is the rising cost of a seed. So you can see here per acre seed cost for corn in US. You can see how the cost is rising. Farmers are not able to save the seed and reuse that. That's a whole different issue. I'm not going in there now. Um, but there are ways how regenerative farming can reduce the number of seeds needed as well. So there are new farming techniques with the regenerative and organic practices. Example, in a rice field, there is a process called system of rice intensification. For every plantation, for the rice, previously we used to take a bunch of seedlings and keep it in one location. So it will be like a 10 plants in one location, and we'll see which one survives in that location. So for an acre, for example, if they had used 100 kilograms of seed, now that same acre only needs 3 kilograms of seed. And in each place, only one seed sampling is planted, and with sufficient space so that one plant survives and it grows very well, and overall yield is higher than what they used to get before. So you can see that 97% reduction in the amount of seeds needed. So regenerative farming can also help with this problem where farmers are faced with a rising cost, and this is a every time the cost of the seeds rise, it's very hard for the farmers. So you can see the benefits of moving to regenerative farming, and the new techniques really helps address this problem as well. So farmers who try to transition to organic, it usually takes 3 to 5 years. So at least in that 36 months, 3 years, they cannot use any synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, or genetically modified seeds. So during this time, it is hard for the farmers, transitioning from a land that they had, if they had used a previously synthetic, chemicals, to transition. It's a long process, and we as consumers should support the farmers by buying organic. So they are taking this effort to take the switch, and it's not an easy effort to switch to organic. So we as consumers, we need to help them buy organic so we can help the farmers, switch to organic. Agriculture tech, ag tech, we should use technology to help us understand how much water we need to pour use at this particular time. We are not over watering, or we are not over adding fertilizers, so only the right amount needed. So we have technology nowadays. Let's use the technology and minimize and help the plants, provide what is only needed for good crop growth. So it's time that we rethink and revalue agriculture. So the current way, we put the market economy first. And then comes the nourishment economy, is nourishment for the people as well as nourishment for the plant, where we are spending a lot of money in these areas. And then in the economy of nature is at the end. It looks like it's the least priority currently in our current agriculture model, but it has to reverse. When we put the economy of nature up front, as our main goal, then we can see that nourishment for the people and for the plants, automatically is taken care of. It becomes part of that solution. And the economy yield, you get a more yield, and the cost also would be manageable. So the market economy automatically is taken care of. So we have to completely think, rethink, and revalue agriculture now. Soilless farming, as I already mentioned, that in a permaculture, in anything farming on the open land, is going to be susceptible to the weather changes, season changes, and any natural disaster. So all of these would impact. So that will be an ongoing problem. So we have to also, put some effort and resources into soil-less farming. So there are a lot of soil-less farming coming up, hydroponics, where water is circulated in pipes, and you can see that 95% of the water is reused. So only 5% which is absorbed by the plants, the remaining water is a reuse. So we save a lot of water. So with less water we can grow more here. In that water, we are adding nutrients as well. We are aerating that water and adding nutrients. So we have completely full control if we want to use organic ingredients only to as a nutrients in that solution. And the other thing, it's completely closed, so we can control the temperature. No matter what the season is outside, we can still grow inside the building, and control the pests as well. So we can eliminate a lot of these chemicals as well. So, hydroponics is where water is circulated in the pipes constantly. And for this energy, we can completely go renewable energy, for this building as well. Aeroponics is water is not continuously circulated, it's just sprayed in intervals. So we don't need to keep the water running all the time. We can just spray the water in short intervals. The other thing is aquaponics, where we can grow fish and crops at the same time. So, this actually helps us to be extremely careful with the nutrients we add in the water, because any imbalance would affect the fish. And also this will help meet the fish demand and needs to feed the growing population as well. In aquaponics, all types of crops can be grown, including root crops to grains. All sorts of things can be grown using the aquaponics growing method. So here is a picture of Japan's indoor farmland. You can see here they are harvesting. There's a rice field inside the building. Um, Here is Iowa's vertical farm. So as we know that we need to increase the variety of produce, right, needed that we need in our local area. So here you can see in one building, look at all the varieties that are being grown here. So from fruits, we can even grow trees, inside the building. So we need to invest and put some resources into soilless farming, because irrespective of the weather and seasons, we need to feed people. So soilless farming is going to be a big piece of the solution. It's not the only solution. We cannot take our focus off the land farming. So on the land, we have to move to regenerative farming. At the same time, when there is a natural disaster, and to grow more varieties, these soilless farmings are really helping. So, we have to take this into consideration and add some more resources into such farming as well. In the farm, what else can be done, is farmers right now, there's a lot of waste accumulation, and managing that, and this waste also creates greenhouse gas emission. So how do we handle bio waste? So farmers can make their own biochar and sell that. You can see biochar, not only helps with mitigating the methane and nitrous oxide emissions. It also sequesters, helps with the sequestering of carbon. Biochars are being used in water treatments, in freshwater treatments and wastewater treatments. Biochar is being used, and biochar, when it is added in the on the land, it helps retain water and helps with the microbial activity. Also, it helps nourish the microbials there, so it helps revive the soil. And then any remaining biochar can be used for energy production as well. So farmers can make their own biochar and sell that, and make more, and earn out of that as well. Farmers can also sell the waste, agricultural waste, to companies. There are many companies. I'm just showing one company, Innovative, as an example here. They use these farm waste, and create these mushroom material. They grow the mycelium around these farm waste, and it is a substitute for styrofoam. And they also, you can see the microboard, it is a substitute for plywoods. So we can convert farm waste into really usable products like this. And these products, the innovative, all these materials are compostable. So after use, what do you do with that? Compost it. So it breaks down very easily. Other thing that farmers can do with the farm waste is biogas production in their farm. I will share the difference between biogas and biodiesel shortly, but biogas is something that they can produce themselves, and they can use it for their own needs. And if they have excess, they could share it. Even small farms, a small farm in India, they make their own biogas, for their needs. So this is, biogas is from farm waste, bio waste. Okay, so keep that in mind when we look into biodiesel, because biodiesel is being proposed as an option in the farm bill. So the biodiesel, this is the biodiesel cycle. As you can see, it is not coming from farm waste. Okay, so biodiesel actually encourages monoculture farming, because we need more oil crops, we need more seeds to make this oil. So unless this they're going to manufacture biodiesel from actual farm waste, biodiesel is not the solution, whereas biogas is completely from farm waste. So animal field is another area in the food system cycle. So we keep blaming the cattles, but there are low emission feed. So what happened was the cattles, we messed up their food because of this industrial farming needs, livestock growing the farm, industrial farming. But there are low emission feed technologies are coming up right now, and you can see that those low emission food, if we feed them the right way, 80% of the methane production inside their rumen is reduced. So we can greatly reduce the enteric methane creation, formation, and the emissions of these as well. So when we can also feed the rice fields or cornfields, straw from those fields waste, which is the farm waste, for these cattles, and add seaweed into it, and we can see each of those straws and seaweed each reduce about 25% of the enteric methane formation. So there are solutions how we can ensure reduction in methane with the adjusting the animal feed here. So looking into all the other areas from the farm, the processing of that food item, and then transportation, packaging, and coming to retail, and also from there, how we cook, and then how we discard. Also, all of these areas, we need more innovative solutions. There are solutions currently coming up, but we need more innovative solutions in all of these areas. Okay, currently, this is the right time. The US Farm Bill and the California Farm Bill are up for renewal this year. So if you eat, it will impact you. This bill impacts you. So know what's at stake and be involved and give suggestions, to your representatives, so they would make sure that we can go achieve real food sustainability. So we cannot take our eyes off any of these components within the system. We need to ensure that all of these areas are addressed in the farm bill, so that we maintain that perfect balance in this full system. So, in conclusion, before I end, I want to share these top 12 carcinogenic food items. There are contaminants in all of these food items. So, please be aware of these carcinogenic contaminants in all of these food items. Environmental working group, every year they update these top 12 items, and this is the 23's top 12 items. So you can see that these are commonly used produce that we buy, and it will help if you buy organic. So please be aware of the exposure and bioaccumulation within your body, and switch to organic sources. People usually ask, are organic sources more nutritious? No, it is not. Organic foods are not more nutritious, but they don't have pesticides. That's that's the important thing to note here. Okay. So with that, if you're going to propose to your representatives some solutions, I would highly recommend, reading this handbook, where several experts around the world, they had written this sustainable food systems handbook. So read that and share it with your representatives so that they can come up with, a really good farm bill that will bring real food sustainability. So with that, I can open up to any Q&A.
Thank you, Shanti. That was a great presentation, and really obviously covered a lot of ground, pretty much the world, both hemispheres. There was one thing that's been preoccupied my mind with this summer is when bigger tomatoes will be ripe that are locally grown. And so now that's starting to happen. Now I'm on eggplant. I really want to know, when good eggplant will be available, since it's been it was a cool spring into summer as well. And but also in terms of food diversity, you talked about it's very interesting in terms of the sense too, getting in a lot of ways, there's an appreciation for the Southern Hemisphere feeding the Northern Hemisphere, in terms of specialty foods. I mean, for one, chocolate, for instance, only gets grown, cocoa is only grown around the equator, and there's a lot of other kind of things like that. And that's certainly a very good reminder. There are 3 questions, and I'll just read the questions, and then this could be kind of a lightning round to go. But the one question was about no-till farming and how can consumers support it? And then another question was about agrivoltaics, where there's using the land under solar panels in areas. How might agrivoltaics help or hurt things? Personally, I think they provide shade. You can grow crops that need a bit of partial shade. And then also, last question, should someone market transition grown foods that are grown in the 36-month transition? So that category of transition grown on the way to organic, to what extent can that be a thing?
Yeah, so let me
Yeah, now
answer
I
one
know I
at a
threw a
time.
lot at you, so I
Yes,
can repeat any of
yes,
these.
yeah. So I'm trying to pull the slide with uh, the six. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So the first question, how can consumers help tilling? No tilling is, supporting farmers who are, going towards regenerative agriculture. So we need to support them. So any produce comes from those farms. So, under having a list of those farms, and then, supporting them, buying produce from them as a consumer, we can, hang on, let me go back and share from that current slide. I only want that slide here. 1 minute. uh,
I should say, by the way,
so
these questions, all these questions came from Tom Cabot,
okay.
proving that he thinks outside the electric panel.
Okay, so I think I'll quickly switch this way, because it's I'm having struggle because the other one is open here.
I mean, it seems like two of Tom's questions are almost marketing questions, or at least certification, which I think could probably be a whole other talk about, just even organic certification and, even like transition grown
Yeah.
certification would be a new idea.
Yeah,
As
so most of his questions, I think the six core principles, address that, with the tilling, as I said, if we can
Mhm.
and know the farmers who are moving towards regenerative, and we support buying those produce, then as a consumer, we are helping. The other thing with about the agrovoltaic, providing, keeping the soil covered, but that is not a replacement for the rest of the type. Still there should be a diversity, and all the other other areas are need to be considered as well. So just covering the keep the soil covered, yes, it addresses one part of that. We still need to keep an eye and make sure that all the other areas are met as well, then it benefits. um, so that so what the other one was, the transitioning. During the transitioning, again, once we keep buying organic, initially some products might be expensive, but if we support them in that transition at that time, it will help them, because for that 3 years they are still having yields, right? So we should continuously support them through that process. It may not be fully, maybe there should be some labeling, I guess, saying
Mhm.
that in the transition towards organic, right? So at that time there's still yield and they have to sell that. So though it is not a label, so that is something that right now when we go, we don't know that information, right? So organic
Yeah, and there's certainly
produce.
no certification of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So that they are in the process of that is not known to us. But that is a gray area there.
It
We
really
need
would
to
be a
get.
good idea. I mean,
Yeah,
but just even organic certification is not certainly foolproof,
yeah, yes,
around the world as well.
yes.
Last question,
Mhm.
actually, come up about plants grown in healthy soil or in contact with microorganisms in the soil. Does this affect the micronutrients in these plants, and how do the micronutrients compare in plants grown without soil?
Okay, so micronutrients actually, the microorganisms in the soil, healthy soil, they break down the things in a way that the plants can easily absorb. So they are not taking away the nutrients from the what the plant needs. They consume nutrients in a different form, and in that process they're breaking it down so the plants can absorb in a way that is needed. So the natural healthy soil, is not taking away, but it is only enabling, okay, the growth. So if we look into soil-less farming, we are adding the nutrient, those nutrients, when the water is circulating, it hits the root. So the roots are able to immediately absorb. So the form that we are adding is that the roots, a plant can immediately absorb when it touches the root. Did that help answer the question?
Yeah, I think also there was this distinction between plants in soil and plants grown without soil, more the vertical
Oh,
gardening.
okay. So there is actually not much different. Actually, it's healthier. The plants, if you see, when they produce their own energy for their growth. So because the nutrient, if you look into the function of the root's function is to find nutrients and resources, right? Water. So it used to grow. So if we look, it's an immediate adaptation. We can in the testing, it's something that can be easily seen. Is you take the same seed, put it in two different, one with the soil and one without soil. You can see the adaptation of the root will immediately change. The one with the soil will grow deeper, because it needs to find. So the plant is spending some of its energy produced for the growth of the root. Whereas for the one without the soil, where the nutrients are touching the root system, it doesn't spend. The root does not grow deep, but it grows really good above the stem, and the produce is actually much more healthier. So, and also absence of other pesticides and those chemicals, and it is grown in perfect temperatures. So the produce is much more healthier as well. And we are giving it time for it to fully mature. So one of the other impacts on the soil with the climate change and more CO2 in the atmosphere, plants are growing and maturing faster than before. So we are the grains and seeds may not have the same nutrient level as before when they're growing fast, when they're maturing fast. Whereas in this control environment, we are giving the full time for it to mature. So it's actually much more healthy. And the nutrient that we are adding, we can ensure that it's organic and no chemicals. Okay.
Well, Shanti, thank you very much for this presentation. It just there's a lot of micronutrients to absorb and macronutrients with your coverage of this. And so thanks for coming to Sustainapalooza. And
Pleasure.